Hey guys, welcome back to DPReview, and today we're here at Elbow Falls. The reason I'm all bundled up here is because it's super cold out. We're supposed to be here for Magic Hour, but I think since we went to Carl's Jr., I think we just got out of time because we got some beautiful light when we were there, but then it all seemed to come really cold, really dark. I don't know how many photos we're gonna get out here, but it looks like we're gonna have a lot of fun.
Welcome back, DPReview TV viewers. It is Jordan here because Chris has tragically fallen ill, and it couldn't have been at a worse time because the brand new Hasselblad X2D 100C has just arrived, and this is a huge upgrade over what we saw before with the X1D2. A lot of new features that I want to walk you through, and really I want to get to the bottom of, is this a medium format mirrorless camera that you should really consider? Now right now it's pouring rain outside, so before I take the camera out, first I thought I would swing by Inner City Brewing, one of our favorite local breweries here, and walk through some of the ergonomic differences on the X2D. One of the standout things with the X1D, I think it was one of the most beautiful cameras ever made, and they kept the styling very, very similar with the X2D, but there are some major changes with it. For starters, right on top here, we no longer have a mode dial. You've got a mode button, but that gets us a top panel LCD with all of your camera settings on there. And what's really interesting is it is a full color display, even though almost none of the settings are actually displayed in color. We also get a new electronic viewfinder. This is a 5.76 million dot panel, and it's cycling at 60 frames per second. So it's a whole lot more usable than what we saw before, both sharper and faster to refresh. We also have the same 2.36 million dot LCD panel on the back, which is a touchscreen, which is how you'll operate the camera. But thankfully, this is now a tilt display. Since this is a camera that a lot of people will be using for landscape work, I think that's great. But unfortunately, you can't tilt it down for overhead shooting, and there's no articulation if you want to shoot it in portrait orientation, but I'll take a little bit of tilt over no tilt. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the shutter button on this camera. I mean, it draws attention to itself. It's a lovely yellowishy, goldy kind of, I don't know, it's got an H on it and it's very pretty, but it also feels fantastic. There's a very positive, almost a click when you push it down all the way to take a photo, which is important because I just took a picture and you could hear it's basically silent. Of course, the biggest upgrade on this and why it's called the X2D 100C is because we now have a beautiful 44 by 33 millimeter medium format sensor that's gone from 50 megapixels up to 100 megapixels. And I mean, this is not a mystery sensor. We're pretty much sure this is the same one that we've seen in the GFX 100S, 100, but that's a good thing. That is one of our favorite sensors on the market. And to get anything better, you're looking like well over 25,000 US dollars. But it's not just a megapixel increase on this sensor. They've also added phase detect pixels to it, which is really going to help with the autofocus speed, especially when paired with some of the new lenses. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But also this now has in-body image stabilization, 5 axes, and it's being rated at up to 7 stops, which is actually quite a bit more effective than the Fujifilm GFX 100S at 6 stops of stabilization. Well, it looks like the rain is letting up outside, so I'm going to finish this delicious gingerbread porter. And let's go take this thing out and actually shoot some pictures. Okay, I thought the rain was letting up, but that's clearly not the case. I came out here to get a shot of the skyline, and then I was going to zoom in and show you the incredible resolution that this is capable of. But with this rain, you can see it's just a bunch of gray haze. I mean, it is one really nice thing. This is a weather-sealed body. That's really nice. But I think I'm going to have to go hide inside and walk you through some more features on this because nobody wants to just watch a soggy man standing around. Okay, this is a lot cozier, and while we're waiting for the rain to stop, let's talk about the recording options on the X2D. Now, the X1D, X1D2 were both pretty conventional, just recording to dual SD cards. Here, though, we have an internal 1 terabyte SSD built right into this camera, and you can get the photos off it just by plugging into USB-C. And that is a lot of photos, even though the raw files are very, very big on this camera. As well, there's a CF Express Type B card slot on it that's going to let it write those files really quickly. I mean, this is not a fast shooting camera, but it is really nice when you want to download all the files. It's much quicker than SD cards. But also it's great just that if you leave your CF Express card at home or you want to have backup recording to a different file format, it works very similar to a dual card system, just with that internal SSD. I think this is a really smart decision, and I'd like to see this on a lot more premium cameras. Usually I like to dedicate a lot of time talking about the video capabilities of a new camera, but that's very easy with the X2D because it doesn't record any video, which honestly, unless they were planning to give it a feature set that rivals the GFX 100 and GFX 100S from Fuji, I don't think is a huge loss. People are going to be buying this for the stills. It does make me curious why there's microphone and speakers on this camera. I hope the speaker is so they later add firmware so you get that wonderful Hasselblad cha-chunk sound when you push the shutter, but that's probably just wishful thinking. One of the biggest upgrades to the X2D has nothing to do with the body at all. It's at the same time Hasselblad launched their new V series of lenses. They've got 3 to start, a 38, a 55, and an upcoming 90mm lens, all f2.5. And these have real upgrades over their previous lenses. They're faster focusing and very fast sync speeds on all of these. But what really sets them apart for me is they've now got a manual focus clutch with a hyperfocal distance scale and a distance scale on that focus ring in meters and feet. And this just makes manually focusing so much easier than the old completely focused by wire lenses that we had before. Sometimes the autofocus struggles on these cameras, and when that happens, it's nice to know that the manual focus experience is now much improved with these new lenses. Now bear in mind, if you're looking at getting into the Hasselblad system, the lenses do tend to be a lot more expensive than what we see in, say, the Pentax and Fujifilm GFX systems. Every Hasselblad XCD lens has a leaf shutter built into it, which enables very fast sync speeds, but also means you're going to be paying a lot more for all of these lenses. In terms of autofocus, we now have phase detect pixels on the sensor, and that did mean that the camera would often jump to the subject faster than what it would do previously, though I did find in some high contrast situations it could still hunt a little bit. But my biggest issue with this is it was giving me a lot of false positives, where I would get a green box saying my subject was in focus, but it would be front or back focused when I actually reviewed the picture, which made me overshoot quite a bit. And honestly, a lot of the time I found myself manually focusing. The punch-in tool is really good, very detailed, so I did get good results that way. But honestly, the autofocus on this camera I think is really its Achilles heel. But I wanted to get a second opinion, so let's go meet one of my friends outside. All right, it's day 2, the rain has stopped, and I think a lot of people will be looking at the Hasselblad as a portrait camera, so I called up my good friend and very talented photographer, Ryan HK, and I want you to tell me, there's a whole bunch of like full-frame mirrorless cameras, there's the medium format Fujifilm GFX. The big differentiating factor is the Hasselblad X2D has a leaf shutter. Why do we care?
I love them for the ability to knock down ambient light, especially like shooting environmental portraits, a lot of times outside, bluebird days. It's really important to be able to control that ambient a little bit more. And some of the other systems, you're limited in a true sync speed. It's like a 1/25th, 2/50th. Sync speed for me is huge with leaf shutter. And the fact that there's almost no vibration from like an actual...
It's super stable when you're shooting it. And I mean, there's workarounds for those other systems. There's high-speed sync, but that really drops the output of your strobes. Or there's hypersync, which, I don't know, some people say it works. I can never get it to work consistently.
I've never used it.
So just being able to plug it in, pop the strobe at very fast shutter speeds, you know, up to like 1,000th of a second on some of these lenses.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, but that's all theoretical. So to test it, we've got our model Neil is coming here. We're going to go shoot some portraits, and we're going to bring the skies down. Come on! I think that went well.
Yeah.
Great. So you got some background with the Hasselblad cameras, right?
Yes. I have this old tank.
Look at that.
This old tank.
Yeah, the H4D 50.
Yeah.
And now moving forward to one of the modern Hasselblads, what was like the shooting experience like? How was it different?
I really like the way it feels. It's nicer to shoot with than this is, for sure.
It's not a boat anchor like that thing. Now, I heard you muttering a lot when you were shooting. And what was your major issue with the new camera?
Muttering is polite. Are you kidding me? This focus, Jordan.
What's going on there?
Backlit, it struggled. And I thought it was maybe our shooting situation. So I grabbed the tank out of the bag to just see. And that 12-year-old camera has one focus point. Just in the middle.
Yep.
That's it. Can't move that thing around.
Yep.
Can't do anything with it. And it hit every time. Oh man, look. It's just focusing. It's 12 years old. And it just doesn't miss.
Yeah,
we
here we
a
have
single frame.
297 phase detect autofocus points on it, and I could hear it. It's hunting back and forth in backlit situations. It was really struggling.
Maybe if it had 298 and that 98 was good.
Difference.
Jordan, I'm going back to a 12-year-old camera pretty quick here. For anyone that's probably bringing strobes out to a location and shooting in the sun, generally that giant fireball is going to be a nice rim light, and you're going to be backlit, and you're going to be using your strobes as some form of like shape or fill or however you want to do it. But it doesn't work if you can't focus the camera.
Yeah. Ryan, I'm sorry you had to struggle today to get actually what turned out to be beautiful photos. So way to work through it. But I don't know, is this a camera that you would be adding to your camera bag potentially?
I don't think so. I mean, if there's a firmware update that sorts a lot of the issues we've already talked about out, it'd be a neat investment, but I'm super happy with what I have now, and I don't really see a workflow advantage with this, which is always kind of where I end up justifying spending money.
Totally.
Is in a workflow.
Well, you do beautiful work, so you should definitely check out Ryan's work on Instagram. Also our model Neil, great to work with, lovely guy, and you got some beautiful photos of him. Check him out as well there. But it's time for my final judgments on this thing. All right, I'm back. I've had some time to look at the files from the X2D, and just as expected, they look very similar to what we saw with the GFX 100 and 100S. I do like that this gives you the option when you're shooting RAW to choose between 14 and 16-bit, and theoretically, you should see a little less noise in the shadows at 16-bit, but just like the GFX 100, we found an almost imperceptible difference between the two of those when you really push the shadows. Now, one big difference with the Hasselblad compared to a lot of other medium format cameras is there is no focal plane shutter. That means if you want to adapt lenses, you're going to be limited to the electronic shutter. And I got to say, this thing reads out very, very slowly. You're going to have a lot of rolling shutter artifacts with it. I don't think it is that usable for anything other than like static scenes, landscape, posed portrait. If you want to use this for anything action related, then you don't want to adapt lenses. You want to stick to those leaf shutter lenses. That said, there is so much information in these RAW files. You can really, really play with them using Hasselblad's Focus software. Now, I do wish that there was support for these files through Capture One, but that's made by Phase, which is Hasselblad's primary competition. I wouldn't hold my breath for that to ever happen. Time to introduce a brand new segment. This is that still pisses me off after using the camera for a few days. And number one, it's just autofocus limitations. I really wish there was an option to select a smaller focus point. When I was trying to take a wider portrait of my son and he's wearing a hat, it's just constantly focusing on the brim, and the focus point is so large that I can't be more precise than that, so I wound up manually focusing in those situations. As well, this camera is designed so that you use the touchscreen to select the focus point, but I found when I was shooting out in a lightly drizzly rain, it got really unpredictable. Now, it is nice this gives you the option to use the twin control dials to select your autofocus point, but it's not that intuitive, it's kind of clunky. I just wish that they put an autofocus joystick on this. As well, one of the big benefits of mirrorless cameras is having a live histogram when you're shooting, but that's unavailable on the X2D. So I actually had to shoot the image, go into playback, and check the histogram there to find out if I'd exposed the image properly. This is a camera with a ton of dynamic range, and to properly expose to the right, I really want that live histogram. Hopefully Hasselblad can add this in firmware, because with its current implementation, it really slows you down and makes this camera tough to work with. So is the X2D a worthwhile purchase? Well, I think it's for a pretty niche audience who really appreciates and knows how to use those fast sync speeds from leaf shutter lenses, because you're really not going to find any other mirrorless medium format options aside from the earlier X1Ds, and this is a huge improvement. We've got some nice additional features. I love having that 1 terabyte of internal hard drive space. The IBIS just makes this quite a bit better when you're actually out shooting in the field, but it has incredibly stiff competition from Fujifilm. Looking at the GFX 100 and 100S, their biggest advantage for me is their much more modern autofocusing system with eye detect and continuous autofocus, but also they've got access to a lens lineup that has a lot more zoom lens options for it, and those lenses tend to be quite a bit less expensive because they don't need leaf shutters. And if you like video, well, the Hasselblad doesn't have it, and the Fujifilms actually have surprisingly good 4K video recording. The biggest drawback to those cameras is that really slow sync speed with that internal focal plane shutter, which the Hasselblad rectifies. So if you really need that fast sync, Hasselblad's a good choice. But I think for the majority of photographers looking to step into medium format, the Fujifilm is a more flexible choice. Hopefully you found this video useful. The X2D is a huge upgrade from what we've seen before from Hasselblad, and I really like the direction that they're moving. And I'm hopeful that we'll see some nice firmware updates that make the X2D an even more powerful platform. But thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe to see more episodes from us here at DPReview TV.
If you wanna that bell icon and subscribe here, that would be great. And also, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. I already said subscribe. Sorry. Bye.